on our own 2 feet, equal to any in the world. Self-determination, responsibility for ourselves, independence. They said it could not be done. But Sir Michael put together a crew of, in 1972, government that would take us to our goal to independence. The crew included not only Somare but myself and John Caputin from the islands, Yambaki Okuk from the highlands, John Guys from Milne Bay, Albert Marikiki from Gulf. He took leaders from every part of the country to be creating unity out of diversity. And that small group set sail for a goal that we could only dimly see at that time, but with a clear vision of what we wanted desperately to achieve. And even then, there was no question who was the captain of the ship. I said before, Sir Michael was born to soar and to take the people of Papua New Guinea to heights they had never dreamed of. But this was only because Sir Michael worked harder than most. I remember he worked late into the night, every night, often until midnight. I am reminded of the old saying attesting to making of great men. The heights reached by great men were not attained by sudden flight, but by the fact that they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward to the night. Sir Michael toiled late into the night, more nights than I've ever seen any man toil. Those first years from 1972 to 78 were the greatest years of creativity, cooperation and commitment to opening Papua New Guinea to the world. Together we took on the greatest challenge in the history of any country, the challenge to be independent, to be free. There was much to do if we were going to achieve that, but we did it. We gained the recognition and endorsement of the United Nations. We created our own central bank, the Bank of Papua New Guinea. We bought out the Commonwealth Bank of Australia and established our own commercial bank, the PNGBC, and formally introduced our kina and toyo on 19th April 1975, 5 months prior to independence. We gained entry to the ADB, the World Bank, the IMF. We became a part of the World Economic Community. And through it all, Sir Michael was the captain of the ship of state. And he steered us safely to the haven of independence. And let us recognize what a huge achievement this was. Captain Somare was dealing with a land of 1,000 cultures in a land of over 800 languages, a land in which relations among neighboring tribes and clans had historically been more competitive and even violent than peaceful and cooperative. Just think about it. The United Nations has only 193 countries, but the territories of Papua and New Guinea had nearly 1,000 different nations, 1,000 different cultures, and almost every one of them with their own language. We have 5 times as many languages as there are countries in the United Nations. Now that is, Mr. Speaker, a Tower of Babel. That is what Michael Somare confronted in his quest to unite the territories of Papua and New Guinea into a single nation. That is what we all confronted, but Somare was the captain and he had to take control. And it was not only the internal challenges, Sir Michael had to deal with the colonial power with Australia. And many in Australia were not ready for independence for Papua New Guinea. But led by Sir Michael, we coolly and calmly dealt with Australian leaders such as Gough Whitlam, Malcolm Fraser, Andrew Peacock, and others in the region, moving us ever closer to independence. Those of you who were not there have no idea of the challenges. This country was not easy to construct, not easy to make. How many of you listening today remember the Bougainville Independence Movement, the TVWAN Association, Papua Besena, the New Ireland Independence Group? Our country was splitting apart almost before it even came together. But our captain was Somare. And our captain was born to fly, to soar to his destiny, to soar to the destiny of Papua New Guinea. The constitution of an independent state of Papua New Guinea put greed aside and put the welfare of the nation, of the people of this nation first. Thanks to the leadership of Sir Michael, we constructed a country that is dedicated to the people and not to special interests. And thanks to Sir Michael, this country was born in peace. At the same time that PNG was being created, many other countries around the world were being born in the pain of blood, in the agony, the torment, the anguish of war. But not Papua New Guinea. Sir Michael guided this country of 1,000 cultures to independence from its colonial master without the loss of a single life in the independence struggle. And that is why we're here in this chamber of the people today. We're here to thank God above for sending us a leader, a liberator, who had the skills and intellect to lead us peacefully into the new world of independence and self-reliance. But now the unthinkable has happened. Now our captain is gone. We must carry on without him. Everything we have today, our freedom, our independence, our strong, proud country, we owe to Sir Michael. But he can no longer join us in this celebration of freedom. I have called Somare our captain, Mr. Speaker, and that he was. It reminds me of what Walt Whitman had to say in a poem he wrote on the death of Abraham Lincoln. Whitman called Lincoln his captain and said, "Oh, Captain, my captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for you the flag is flung. For you the bugle trills. For you bouquets and wreaths. For you the shores are crowding. For you they call, the swaying mass, the eager faces turning." I wish Sir Michael could rise and join us today. The nation is calling for him, for he was our captain. He will be sorely missed, but Speaker, Sir Michael will never die in our hearts. Each time we celebrate our country, each time we celebrate our independence, our freedom, we will celebrate Sir Michael Somare. We thank you, Sana, from the entire country. And thank you from me, your old friend, your old teammate. I thank my friend that we have made a good team. And I think our country has benefited from our efforts. We can ask no more than that. I will never forget the last time we were together on Independence Day in KVN last year. It was ironic, Mr. Speaker, but I now know that on that day we were saying goodbye for the last time. I cannot think of a more appropriate day than Independence to say goodbye to my best partner in the creation of Papua New Guinea. We will never forget you, my brother. Sleep then. Rest now. And before I conclude, I want to once again thank the Prime Minister and his government for giving such a dignified farewell to a great man. So let him rest in peace. God bless you.
I call upon Honorable Pius Swinky to make a speech.
Mr. Speaker, Your Excellency, the Governor General, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, his Chief Justice, all the ministers, members, people of Papua New Guinea. There are two important dates in life. One is the day you're born, and the other is the day you pass away. Sir Michael Somare was born on 1936, and he passed away on the 26th of this month. During his space of life, the effect he had on society, the influence he had in our country, and in the region is so huge. In the last 14 days, many have paid condolences within the country, within the region, and they've described him in many ways. Somare was born to be a leader. He was a born leader. When he went to school, and he became a teacher, and later became a broadcasting officer, some of the big influences that had on him, they were influences that had effect on him, which just shaped him. As he was going to school in Sogeri, he built and met a lot of good Papua New Guinean mates. They were young. They were Papua New Guineans. They were going to school, seeing what their country was like, how they're experiencing it, and what the relationship was between our colonial masters and themselves. And while they were there were many other influences that were taking place. They see how other countries in the Commonwealth, the British Empire, had many colonies in Africa and Asian region. They were seeing these changes, that black people in those countries were slowly becoming independent. The countries like Ghana became independent in 1957. Close by, they see Malaysia became independent in 1957. That made Somare. Somare was determined. Somare was the magnet that got Papua New Guinea young men together. And he started his journey. When he came to the administration college in 1965, he met another young Australian, Bob Hawke, who was a research officer with the ACTU, Australian Trade Union. Bob Hawke was young, and he was from the Labour Party. The Labour Party in Australia were more progressive. They were international. They were not in government at that time, in 1965. Somare became a politician in 1968. That shaped him. But that laid the foundation, because he was in a region where he was able to pick out the country, the region, Indonesia, Singapore, Australia, the Pacific. It could see that. So the relations it built with the Labour Party was so critical to the independence of this country. Bob Hawke became the ACTU president in 1969. That's the time when Grand Chief Michael Somare became member of parliament in 1968. That strong relationship with the Labour Party was so fundamental to the success of this country. When he became, in 1968, when he became member of parliament, there was certain changes taking place. Tanzania, another country in Africa, became independent. Julius Nyerere became the prime minister of Tanzania. In Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta became president in 1963. And then close by, Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew became prime minister in 1965. In 1967, there was another major event that took place in Indonesia. Sukarno, the founding prime minister, president of Sukarno, was removed by General Suharto. Now, this was all happening within the region, and Somare was a young man. Somare could see that, could see where his country will be. And it was the magnet that brought other Papua New Guinea like-minded together. The country was not ready. Papua New Guinea was not ready for independence. Because in Australia, the Mincy government that ruled Australia for many years, and there was an external affairs minister called C. Barnes, who said Papua New Guinea will never get independence. Luckily, in 1972, through Bob Hawke, was president of the trade union movement in Australia, the Labour Party came into government in 1972. Before 1972, God Whitlam, who was opposition leader, traveled throughout Papua New Guinea in 1971. He went to Rabaul, and young John Capperton and Oscar Tamur were there. And he told them that your country will be independent when I get into government. Luckily, in 1972, the Labour Party came into government in Australia. The rest was history. God Whitlam was an internationalist. God Whitlam was a non-racist. God Whitlam was the right man in that region. He pushed Papua New Guinea to become independent. So, in 1972, we were moving in the right direction. Thanks a lot to Sir Michael Somare, Sir Julius Chen, Sir Yambagi Okuk, Sir Thomas Kavali, Abeya Oliwali, Dr. Tareka, many others, Oscar Tamur, John Capperton. They were the founding fathers who took our country forward in 1972. These changes were so critical in our country. Mr. Speaker, the most important, which I believe in 74, was the Constitutional Planning Committee. Somare knew that. The Grand Chief knew that. He has to build a house. What kind of house he must build? The house must be the Constitution of Papua New Guinea. That is the house. That is what the foundation is. That is where the posters are. That is where the branches are. He set up a team of Papua New Guineans. Paul Sarek, John Capperton, John Kappa, Madabe Yui, Mackenzie Daugi, and many others. They traveled right throughout the world. They went to Tanzania, to African countries. They went all over. They traveled without Papua New Guinea throughout our country. Somare was smart. He knew he had to put this house together. What is he going to create? The creation, make sure the Constitution was right. The Constitution is the foundation. He gave priority to that. That is why today, when we pay our respects to this great man, this, I call him Chief all the time, when we respect him, we must think about what is laid down for us. The Constitution is so clear. The executive government, it made sure it's clear. the courts, the parliament. What are the powers? What are the functions? It's stated clear in the most detailed constitution. Somare was clear. The executive cannot interfere with the courts. The courts cannot interfere with the parliament. The separation of power was clear. Today, when we pay respect, we must think about what we are going to do now, from now onwards. Honorable members, what we can honor him through this. Prime Minister of the country must know that he cannot interfere with the police force on operation methods. The Prime Minister of the country must know that he cannot interfere with the courts. The Prime Minister of the country must know that he cannot interfere with the public prosecutor. The Prime Minister of the country must know he cannot interfere with the Ombudsman Commission. He is a policy maker. He is not supposed to interfere with the operationals of those institutions that Somare built. Same, the parliament cannot interfere with the executive government. The courts cannot do. Our founding father, Michael Thomas Somare, created this to protect this country. He created this. Every prime minister, every minister must know. We must know that when you interfere with the police force on operational methods, you are weakening the system that Somare built. Because the powerful, the rich, will manipulate and control. The silent, the small majority will be marginalized. That is not Somare's dream. Somare's dream is make sure there's justice, fairness, things are operated properly in our country. All I want to say today, we pay great respect to the chief. I come to know him in 1977, 75 when I was a university student. Those were the exciting times. He was an inspiring leader who inspired the young ones, who inspired all of us. My first time to meet him was at Sir James Sito, used to own Lynx Freezer, still there in Gordon's. Late Cecil Abel, Charles' father, used to work very closely with Somare. And I was at university. My student mates asked me to go for the elections. So I had to go and see Cecil Abel. Cecil introduced me to Somare Kiki. Somare Kiki, I went to meet him, and that's the time I met Chief with a group of young men. The impact that he had on me has changed me, made me who I am today. Today, I ask you, all of us, members of parliament, we have a big responsibility to our country. All of you have a big responsibility to this young country. Power must be exercised with care. Power does not mean you're a custodian of the people. It's not something you're born. Power must be exercised with care for everything we do. Look at this great man in front of us today. He's lived a simple life. He's done all the right things. He's our best teacher. In his death, we can only learn from him. The way we can honor him is to honor him, to respect our Constitution, respect all the institutions he has set up. Those of you who are appointed as police commissioner, you must always know that the new constitutional office holder, you're not to carry out the instruction of a minister or a police prime minister on operational matters. You are the police commissioner. The chief ombudsman commissioners, you must know that you are not there to be manipulated and carry out instructions of politicians. You are there to do a job. The public prosecutor, you are there to do an independent job. The courts must do the same. if we all practice and do all these right things, our people will be safe, our country will be safe. Lady Veronica, Ata, Betha, Sana, Michael Jr., my time to meet and sit with the Grand Chief was when I was sitting beside him at the funeral service of Somare. He was in the middle. I was sitting on the side. Prime Minister was sitting on the other side. I sat with him, and then we finished the service, and I said goodbye to him. I'm going to go to the Independence Hill to see Macary's body put down. I said goodbye to him. That was the only time I met him. The second time, I wanted to come and pay him a visit on the 25th. I told my son, Nathan Winty, get in touch with the Somare boys and let them know I'm coming down to see him. I flew down on Thursday in the afternoon, the last flight from Hagen. Came down and gave a call. Nathan gave the call for Ata, Sana, and Dulcie. I called. Dulcie answered. I'm coming to pay a visit to my friend. Is he there? Can I come to the hospital? Dulcie said, Papa, I'm putting him in intensive care. You come to morning time and me by carry me go looking. On that day, I was thinking a lot, sleeping. The next morning I got up. The first news I got was on ABC. I didn't see him. I came to see him. I didn't see him. He was a great Papua New Guinean. On behalf of all the people of Papua New Guinea, Grand Chief, you have influenced the lives of all our people in the country. I join Sir Julius Chen on behalf of everyone, pay our biggest respect, and also thank you to the people of ECPIC, to the people of Murik, and also another politician I want to mention is Peter Luce, who was so instrumental in getting Somare into Parliament. With this, rest in peace.
I call upon the Honorable Peter O'Neill to make a speech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Excellency, the Governor-General of Papua New Guinea, the Chief Justice of Papua New Guinea, Prime Minister, distinguished leaders, and our guests. We are here today joining millions and millions of Papua New Guineans, paying our respect to a great Melanesian leader. A leader who has served this country well for over 50 years as a teacher, as a broadcaster, as member of parliament, member of legislative assembly, prime minister, minister of state, opposition leader, and many, many capacities that we now come to acknowledge his huge lifelong contribution to the nation building of our country. We express our sympathies and pass on our condolences to the family, in particular Lady Veronica and the children and their grandchildren, the people of East Sepik, in particular people of Murik Lakes, who have shared this great man with the country and our people. His achievements are many. All we can do is to express our gratitude for the service that he has done for our country and our people. We all know that he has brought us through many turbulent times, in particularly when we were under the administration of our colonial administration, in attaining self-government in 1973, and then subsequently independence in 1975. Some of us who are here in this honorable house, or many of us, have worked closely with Sir Michael, either as his minister or member of his government, or member of this honorable House. And we've spent many years hearing all the stories that today has been recalled by both our senior leaders about the struggles of a country trying to find its own identity in this global community. The colonial administration was not easy for all Papua New Guineans. And Sir Michael used to tell many of our colleagues here about the treatments that he used to get under that administration. It is no wonder that it drove him to try and get the recognition that our people truly deserved. And he was able to do this because of his upbringing. Upbringing in the village in the Murik Lakes, upbringing as a chief and a leader of his tribe and his people, upbringing as a Christian, strong Christian believer, and a strong family man that he was. Those particular traits served him very well. He was able to unite a country as diverse as ours. Our country is one of the most unique countries in the world. There are not as many tribes in any other country in the world as ours, not many different cultures, not many different languages, and of course the diversity of our country itself. It is a challenge for any man. We are thankful that our country was able to have Sir Michael leading us at that time. We must be thankful for the efforts that he has put in, forging together all this diversity and different cultures to form a united country that we are now enjoying today. A country that is progressing very well, achieving many of the dreams that he had for our country. In those times, Mr. Speaker, Sir Michael used to recall, there were not many doctors, there were not many lawyers, there were not many pilots or no pilots at all. There was hardly an educated population in our country, except of a very few leaders who just graduated out from the University of Papua New Guinea and were given the position of responsibility, even without the working experience. But Sir Michael was able to guide them to some of the great things that they have achieved in our country. That is largely due to this great man that is lying here today. We owe it to him that we have achieved independence in a very peaceful manner. We are now living in a very harmonious society, united society, and a very strong democratic society as well, Mr. Speaker. Even after achieving independence in many other countries around the world, who have similar experiences as ours, have gone through turbulent times in the instability of governments and the institutions that they represent. But for over 46 years, our country has been able to hold together, strong as ever, despite changes of governments, despite differences in political opinion. We have been able to maintain the independent state that we continue to have in this country. Mr. Speaker, Sir Michael is certainly deserving of the word and our affection as father of our country. As two of our senior leaders have stated, he has forged a constitution that we are enjoying today, which is quite unique in any other, compared to any other parts of the world. Our constitution guarantees our identity, protects our cultures, protects our languages, and protects our individual rights. It gives us equal opportunity and participation in our country. And this is because of the foundations laid by our founding fathers, and especially under the leadership of Sir Michael himself. This constitution has been tested on many occasions, but we have been able to weather them. We are stronger today because of those experiences that we have had. Mr. Speaker, it does not matter how many times we change governments, but the guiding points and plans that Sir Michael has set, particularly out on the 8-point plan that he introduced to our country in 1972, today guide the policy formulation of every government since independence. It talks about guaranteeing equal participation for all our citizens, making sure that they participate meaningfully in the economy, have equal access to services that the government provides, make sure that we are self-reliant, and ensuring the independence of the government institutions that we have built over the years. Mr. Speaker, in part of the 8-point plan, when you read carefully, it also talks about things that we are now talking in this world today, about participation of women in our society. It is one of the main factors mentioned in the 8-point plan. Women participating meaningfully, and this is because of the vision like Sir Michael and his founding leaders had in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a lot needs to be given credit to Sir Michael, and in particular also some of the foreign policies and foreign relations that we have established right across the country. As Sir Julius has talked about IMF and World Bank, but also the countries that we have established a very good, strong relationship. Australia, United States, China, Japan, United Kingdom, and many, many more. These are countries that Sir Michael was able to forge very strong relationships with, that subsequent governments continue to follow his path. Follow the policy that he has set, friends to all, enemy to none. That policy still stands today as we speak, Mr. Speaker. And this is a credit to a leader in our Melanesian society with his experience who was able to forge that, where even despite disagreements, we always find common ground. That is an example that Sir Michael has shown to us. Finding common ground and making sure that we own the decisions that we make. Mr. Speaker, he had an opportunity to ensure that our country's stability was maintained at all times. Yes, at times we served in governments together. In times we were on opposing sides. We had different political views, but that did not stop him from making sure that he maintained a cordial, friendly relationship with every member of this Honorable House. He had a big heart, Mr. Speaker. It was a forgiving heart. Capacity to forgive was with him. And that is why he was able to maintain a strong leadership for over 49 years. Much of it was not Prime Minister. Only 17 years he was Prime Minister, but 32 years he was serving in other capacities. There is a man who is committed, loving his country, loving his people. That is why we are here today, to pay the respect that he deserves. Mr. Speaker, finally, Sir Michael deserves special recognition. He is our founding father. He is our longest-serving member of Parliament. He is our leader, great chief of our country. That is why we are here to pay tribute, and in particular to Lady Veronica, who stood by him for those number of years, and continues to maintain the family and the respect that Sir Michael deserves. May he rest in peace. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Chris Haibeta.
Honourable Speaker, National Parliament, Job Pomat, His Excellency the Governor-General of Papua New Guinea, Sir Bob Dadai, Your Honour, Chief Justice of Papua New Guinea, Kimu Masalika, Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, Honourable James Marape, Deputy Prime Minister, Honourable Sam Basil, our senior leaders, former Prime Ministers, Members of Parliament, Members of the Judiciary, members of a diplomatic corps, and people of Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, we are here to pay tribute to the founding father of our nation. It is fitting that his casket is here with us for the last time, that he stays with us for the last time in House Tamaran, by culture and of significance, a house that is built in the image of his own society, the Sipik society in Muric Lakes. And on this last day, I speak for myself. I speak on behalf of Pangu Party, the party that he formed and led for over 21 years, from 1968 to 1988. For all the members, together with Sir Peter, Sir Paul Lapun, Sir Peter Lewis, Boya Masali, Sir Cecil Abel, Sir Albert Marikiki, Sir Thomas Cavalli, Sir John Momis, and the others that went before them, who found a party to unite all Papua New Guineans in a fight for self-government and for independence. Mr. Speaker, today we sneeze at saying that, well, Somare and Pangu Party gained independence. We got independence. Today, we think it's a small thing. But at the time, the inequalities, the appetite that was practiced by the Australian administration on our own people, on the first House of Assembly and the first Parliament, there was only one graduate on the floor of Parliament. Look at all of you. You've not just gotten 1 degree. Many of you have multiple degrees. Joseph Awai was the only graduate that was in the first Parliament. Today, right around the country, we enjoy these privileges and these freedoms, and we take it for granted. He served 49 years. The people of East Sipik kept bringing him back continuously for 49 years. We owe the people of East Sipik a big favor for giving him to us for 49 years in all the roles that he held. As a member of Pangu Party, forming Pangu Party, out of which came Male National Alliance, National Party, People's Democratic Movement, League for National Alliance, or League for National Advancement, and then finally forming National Alliance Party, which also gave birth to a new generation party. So in the political history of our country, Mr. Speaker, we owe Sir Michael. Out of him, and under his tutelage, Sir Julius Chan, our founding finance minister, the man under Somare who set up the economic institutions of our country, is still here with us today. His third deputy prime minister, who became prime minister, Pius Winty, is still with us here today. Under him, Peter O'Neill, Honorable Peter O'Neill, served as his minister, and he became prime minister. Our prime minister, James Marape, has also served under him as a long-serving education minister. He is prime minister today. The influence the guidance, the inspiration of Sir Michael over the years that has guided many of us, including myself, to rise to where I am, is the contribution that he has done in trying and attempting to ensure that the culture of national leadership is as true to the Constitution, to the principles enshrined in our Constitution as possible. We must give him honor for doing that for us. For all the institutions that have been set up under the Constitution, Speaker, the challenge is upon us to carry on. From now onwards, how do we do it? Some messages have been given, but for me, what I want to say is that Lady Veronica stood by him. The children have stood by him. He has endeared us all to him as our father. And he is our father. He is gone as children. What do we do? Can we keep his principles alive? Respect each other. Have time for each other. Listen carefully and properly and respect and work together. Because he was an egalitarian. Papua New Guinea is not just men. Papua New Guinea is not just leaders. For him, as a compassionate Papua New Guinean, he respected everyone, whether you're a man or a woman or a child or from the village or from whichever part of the country. He knew that the country and the house he built was for you as well as for everyone else. And together under that spirit, I believe if we continue to cooperate and uphold that spirit, we can, as a country, rise to the occasion and continue to build Papua New Guinea to greater heights and follow him. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the people of Gulf Province, I've spoken about Pangu Party on behalf of Gulf Province, especially for those who have served with him, those who have gone, whose families are still in mourning in the province, and show their respects through services on Monday. I want to place on record their deep gratitude for his life, for his leadership, and for involving, during his time, leaders from Gulf Province to assist him, leaders from other Papuan provinces to assist him, to meet our challenges of self-government and independence, and to build, serve and build and lay the foundations of our country in the various fields, not only in politics, but in the public service, to the stage where others could participate and build our country where it is today. Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I say farewell. Papa, rest in eternal peace. Thank you.
The Honorable Seppo Katemo.
His Excellency, the Governor General of Papua New Guinea, His Honor, the Chief Justice of Papua New Guinea, Honorable Speaker, Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, Deputy Prime Minister, Ministers of State, Provincial Governors, backbenchers in the Honorable House, Excellencies from the international community, and more importantly this morning, the family of the late Grand Chief, the Right Honorable Sir Michael Thomas Somare, particularly I am Sinana Badana, Lady Veronica, Bon Oyum Natunay Bonai, on behalf of the people of Abau that I represent, may I personally pass on our deepest condolences to Lady Veronica and the family, the extended family of the Grand Chief, and the people of East Sepik. I came in later in the piece, but the stories that the former prime ministers have told about the enormous leadership challenges that Grand Chief faced, and for him rising to the level of leadership at that time is most admirable. I was one of those at the university that was marching down to Konedobu to protest against Grand Chief leading the country towards independence at the time. Not knowing that one day I would become a politician, and not knowing that I would be at his last tenureship as Prime Minister, his Deputy Prime Minister from 2007 to 2010, Honorable Speaker. And today, I would like to share some of the personal conversations that I had with the Grand Chief himself. One of the personal conversations that I had with him was in Medan, when I sat with him and said, Grand Chief, you are coming towards the end of your political life. What do you think about the future? And he himself said, Puka at that time, because I was not yet recommended by himself to become a knight, said, Puka, he said, I am worried about the country. I am seeing all of you and leaders very well educated now, but I'm seeing another political culture, and so I am very worried about the country for the next 40 years. And that is when the conversation of Vision 2050 came up. So I promised him as his Deputy Prime Minister, why don't you give the nation a 40-year vision for the country after you leave this country, politics. And so proudly in 2009, as the nation remembers, the Grand Chief and the then His Excellency, the Governor General Police Matane, launched Vision 2050. His vision was very, very simple, and in fact it is articulated in Vision 2050, the actual vision. And I want all the leaders and the children to remember what Grand Chief wanted the nation to be for the next 40 years to Vision 2050. And that is to be smart, wise, fair, and happy. Happy included being wealthy and healthy. Smart, wise, fair, and happy. Don't mix it up. He wanted the society to be smart society, smart individuals, to be wise, but he also said they must be fair and they must be happy. My conclusion of this man that lies in this chamber is that he was a giant of a man with a giant of a heart. My personal experience when I left him as his Deputy Prime Minister in 2010, and we changed him before the 2012 elections, that week that we said, Grand Chief said where our Prime Minister is sitting, I sat at the back there. As soon as we walked out, he still met me with open arms. And I just couldn't believe how open, how big a heart was, how forgiving he was, how acceptable he was. And so today I call him the giant of a man with a giant of a heart. I remember reading the history of him being the first Prime Minister, and then the first vote of no confidence was moved on this floor against him. And it is those post-vote of no confidence moments that I saw Grand Chief standing out to be the great leader that he has demonstrated to be over the last 50 years. And those are the conventions, unwritten conventions that the Honorable House has accepted. That no matter our political positions or the deviations that we have against one Prime Minister or another politician, it is after those political dynamics, for example, in his experience, many vote of no confidences. How many vote of no confidences that he had, but every time the election would come, he would become Prime Minister again. That was his legacy. And the reason that I have put together was that he was able to forgive and forget, that he was able to hold everybody together. I associate myself with all the sentiments, the positive sentiments that have been accorded to the Grand Chief from former speakers. I want to demonstrate on behalf of the people of Abau and say thank you to the Grand Chief. Two examples where he demonstrated his big heart and maninonap lustintin law friends. The first incident, one of my great leaders of Abau, the late Seruben Taureka. He passed away, but Grand Chief personally came to Maupa village in Abau at his burial site to witness to bury the late Seruben Taureka. Grand Chief, thank you, Bada Herea. Oya mulalokau, your ability to remember leaders, no one by winning display. So on behalf of the Taureka family and the people of Abau, lau thank you, Oi. Thank you, Bada Herea Momokan. Second example, on behalf of the people of Abau, is in relation to the first Governor General of this country. In the photos at Independence, you will see them both together, the late Sir John Guys. Although he's from Milne Bay, he's also from Abau because he got married to Abau. It was for a long time that his headstone was not put up until I became the Deputy Prime Minister. The family came, and through me we asked the Grand Chief to help. The Grand Chief, out of his heart, gave the money that was needed to erect the headstone of the late Sir John Guys. Headstone is done. Grand Chief, the Right Honorable Sir Michael Thomas Somare. Thank you, Bara Herea. We am lalokau. Tauniman medekene be Bara Herea Mamokan. Those two examples is demonstration of this giant of a man with a giant of a heart. My challenge to all of us today is, I don't think anywhere in history where in the chamber of this parliament, the three heads of state, of government are here, led by the head of the state representative, Prime Minister, the Chief Justice, Speaker, and His Excellency, the Governor General is here. I think this moment calls for the nation to continue to respect the elderly by the young leadership and young people out there coming up and growing up to be the leaders. How many times, Mr. Speaker, in Misawe talk no good law, former prime ministers, just generalize them, only know walking one plus something. How many times have young leaders have said that? We need to stop that. We need to respect. Suppose you play harim or young leader. Suppose you play harim or get a talk former prime ministers or Sir Julius Statim, Winty Statim. all by right team. All display leader here working plenty work here. So you must respect him, law. Display of honorable house, Mr. Speaker. I call upon the nation to unite. As Honorable Prime Minister James Marape, thank you for organizing this house cry. Very dignified way of letting the founder of the nation, the father of the nation off. Thank you too, Lord, you work in this program. Honorable Speaker, I want to recommend two things in honor of the Grand Chief. And as head of the legislature, I want you to think about it. Nowhere in this House of Parliament, name Lord Grand Chief is staff. This place chamber, Grand Hall, give him name. Number two, Grand Chief died of cancer, something that I, as a medical doctor, very familiar with. Minister for Health, Prime Minister, I strongly recommend that we build a cancer hospital in his honor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call upon Honorable Chair Peter Ibadas to make his speech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to recognize the Governor General of Papua New Guinea, His Excellency. I also want to recognize the head of the judiciary and all the judges in the chamber, Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers, members of Parliament. Today I'm in the Law Parliament. Today long talk goodbye, long founding father blonde explanation. Give me all members of Parliament, the people of the country, RMPs, all former Prime Ministers blow me. He talk. Blow me. Look sabe, lo walk about, passing. Blow display, greatest leader, blow display country, Papua New Guinea. Me making more people, blow me long, Enga province. Long, pass him sorry, lo people blow me, you go long, Lady Veronica, Sana, Arthur, Junior Michael, Betha, na Del Sana. Na two, me like pass him condolence, na sorry, you go long, Governor belong Isipik, when the people blow Isipik, na West Isipik. La Oscarai, people belong henga, he express him. Pinis, sorry, la lose him, our founding father, na big player, na strong player leader belong this country. Na this time, me been lose him some talk, long Oscarai. Today me got big player mas long harem, all former prime ministers. He too, he bring him this la kind talk. Time me stop. Osem, long farewell him, pay him tribute. He go along. One pla man aim special long one pla country. One kind lo yimi. Ogada, yimi got time belong Karim, lo mama, a time belong go. Now, yimi sit down here, lo pay him tribute, farewell him, founding Prime Minister of this country. Lo side belong Enga, the people of Enga, me got gratitude, long Prime Minister, from late Grand Chief, Sir Michael Thomas Somare, long work hard, time me give him independence, long recognize him, Enga he come up, last province blown this country. Time me recognize him, na establish him province. Leadership na people blow him yet. Only been kirap, work one time government blow him, now Narbla prime ministers, long work, boom one time, long bring him province Kamanta, the way he stop today. So on behalf of the people of Enga, me like to thank you, long establishing province, na two, long got this close working relationship. One time, people na government long Enga province. Long look sabe na pay him tribute, long founding father blow nation. Plenty of leader blow me, especially all former prime minister. He talk finish na me too, like join him all. Now lose him, talk also. Time me pay him tribute. Now look sabe long all good play work him been making, long country. Long kiss him independence, give him freedom, lo me. The freedom that we enjoy as leaders, the people of this country. Question me been ask him, let me think again. Awesome say puka, in our way he talk. Man he fight hard. One time all colleagues blow him lo this time. You me yet you me no been stopped lo this time. Me no been stopped. Me sumatin that's all. That's all long fight, location freedom. They must have gone through a lot of hard work, stressful hours to deliver this country. Lo himi. Time me pay him tribute. Now look sabe long walk long founding prime minister. And now time blow you me. Long look sabe long him. Long vision belong him. One him kind thinking him he got. Time him bring him independence. He coming up now. You may behind him this kind thinking him been got. And been thinking long free him you me. Now make sure also you me successful as a country. This is la dream man belong him. The vision belong him. Me peel him. Or say poka he talk. Maybe I'm looking for some country he go habrush lik. Time me pay him tribute to the founding father of a nation. You me as responsible leaders must now look na thinking. Suppose you me been go habrush about. Long good blood thinking, founding prime minister of long country been he got. As leaders, you me too must sorry long way you me working or something. Now you me must make him decision. Good blood decision. Long good blood sit down blow people blow me into the future. So whilst representing the people of Enga, I pass him condolence today. Me yet. Osem leader belong province na country too. Me feeling Osem as the founding father passes on, it is important that Mibla or leaders, he can reflect. Reflect. Now, if we have had shortcomings, we can now look to the future and try achieve him this kind good vision. Good blood thinking, belong late Grand Chief. One time this fella, on behalf of the people of Enga, me like talk sorry, love family, na may his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Before Siami ask him, Narbla member lo make him talk longen, and me like talk savelo this honorable house of Sam. Time blow you me and me all around. You me like give him as much as opportunity, all the members of parliament to make him talk. So me ask him also members of parliament, you sort him talk. Now you may give him opportunity as much as possible. Long you may make him all talk. You may like make him no display occasion. One time display ask him, say John Pundari. No make him talk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have convened Parliament to honor the first Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, our Grand Chief, Sir Michael Thomas Somare. These have been very trying times, Mr. Speaker. Last year, the world was challenged with COVID-19, a disease that has brought the world to its knees economically and reminded human beings of our mortality. The year ended tragically with the loss of Papua New Guinea's former Prime Minister, Inse Mekere Marauta, one of the finest gifts of the Papuan people. I also pay my sincerest of respects to the late Sir William Skate and also our living former Prime Ministers as gifts of God to Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, this year begins on a sobering note. We mourn the passing of the father of our nation, our George Washington, our Mahatma Gandhi, our Nelson Mandela. Mr. Speaker, along with Sir Michael Somare, we have lost several prominent Papua New Guineans, both in the public and the private sector. Prime Ministers can only do so much by sharing their vision and laying out the strategic plans. It is those dedicated people in the public service that deliver on these visions. Mr. Speaker, my condolences go out to the families of those that have passed, and we recognize their contributions. Mr. Speaker, I can still remember the first time I sang our country's first national anthem in 1975. The words, as I recall, were, "This is our flag, the flag of our land." 17 years later, Mr. Speaker, as a 25-year-old representing the people of Kompiamambu, I had the privilege of meeting this man whose name I heard when I was but a child. It was a great and a magnificent moment for me, Mr. Speaker. In order for us to sing "This is our flag," the flag of our land, many great Papua New Guineans had to come together. The Grand Chief at that time was the chair of the Constitutional Planning Committee. The Deputy Chief then, John Momes, was a member of the committee alongside Te Habel, Palu Zarek, Hangma Bilas, Megenzi Daugi, Sinage Gira Gira, John Guys, Tony Hila, John Kaputin, Pika Kasau, John Kauper, Paul Langro, Anton Parau, Stanis Toliman, and Matiabe Yui. All worked together as members of the Constitutional Planning Committee. Mr. Speaker, let us not forget these men. They stood beside our Grand Chief during those most trying hours to secure our freedom. As an Opene son, I am proud of the fact that my fathers, Sete Abel and Anton Farao, stood beside the Grand Chief in the development of our Constitution. I must also mention Se Matiabe Yui, the Uli chieftain who stood equally as a founding father with his Opene brothers and the Grand Chief Somare to unite our 1,000 tribes. Just as those greats of old fought beside their brother and achieved victory, their sons stand together at present, one of them wearing the mantle of the Prime Minister with his Opene brothers standing beside him. Mr. Speaker, it is not the first time we have stood together to honor the Grand Chief in great hours of significance. When our Constitution was tested in 2011, during the impasse, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister himself, James Marape, Sir Peter Ipatas, the late Anderson Aigiru, Sam Habel, and myself supported him to the very end. Some of us even went to the elections from the opposition benches. Mr. Speaker, leaders are not a product of accident, but are chosen by God. Our chief Somare was set apart by God for a special role in this nation's history. Just as the Persian king Cyrus was chosen by God before his birth for the preservation of the children of Israel and the restoration of Jerusalem. Remember, he was a pagan king who freed the Jews from the Persian Empire. Well, I'm trying to say, Mr. Speaker, God chooses leaders. Mr. Speaker, Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare has proven himself a worthy tool in the hands of the King of Kings, the Almighty One who raises up nations obedient to his will. The same God who is the great judge, who chooses and removes leaders, the God who crushes empires when they stray from his will. Mr. Speaker, we should not just mourn Sir Michael Somare's passing, but also give honor to the true power, the sovereign God of the universe who worked through him to change the course of our nation. Mr. Speaker, in the midst of our tears and our praise, let us take this moment to reflect on all that has transpired and to thank our God. Mr. Speaker, we reflect not only the grandness of the life of our fallen champion, but we must reflect on the path this nation is to embark upon. Mr. Speaker, in the presence of death, it is good time for us to think about how we should live. Mr. Speaker, that has always been the price of freedom. Many nations have stood to shed blood for their freedom. Even now, as we look across our borders, we see our brothers and sisters in West Papua suffering because they are not a free people. Papua New Guinea received its freedom in the words of Scripture without money and without price. Free as the air we breathe, Mr. Speaker. Yet in order for this gift to be received, one had to rise to the occasion. That person that stood like a giant to give birth to our nation, Mr. Speaker, is the man whose death has brought us together at this time. Mr. Speaker, we are gathered here to honor one of our finest Kumul warriors. His cry of freedom, once shouted from the mountain tops, rang through the beautiful valleys and all the way to the seas, is now taken up by a son of his from the Uli people. A son has had his father's cry and now makes his people to a new path of freedom. Our Prime Minister has embraced a warrior's call from the Papuan son, a cry to take back Papua New Guinea and to strive for economic independence. Mr. Speaker, this reminds me of a similar challenge the children of Israel faced a long time ago. The children of Israel stood before Canaan and saw giants in their strongholds as they buried the leader on the borders of Canaan. Moses, who had led them through the Red Sea, and for 40 years he served as a symbol of hope for the Israelites. Moses was the one who spoke directly with God. Now Moses was dead, and they trembled, for they feared the task before them. In this time of confusion and conflict, two great men rose to the challenge to carry the task that Moses had begun: Caleb and Joshua. Mr. Speaker, Caleb and Joshua were men of just ordinary abilities, but it was in their courage, faith, and desire to seek out what was best for their people they were chosen by God. Just as Joshua and his companion rose to meet the challenge, today one of the sons of Somare has stood up courageously, let me put it that way, Mr. Speaker, to continue his father's fight. The fight to go beyond political independence and achieve economic independence. Just as the Israelis rallied behind the banner of Caleb and Joshua to conquer the land of the giants, we must rise to the occasion and continue the battle for economic independence. Mr. Speaker, let the death of the founding father of the nation fill us with courage and hope, spurring us towards grander conquest above and beyond what he would have possibly dreamed when he won independence for us. Mr. Speaker, Papua New Guinea's journey does not end with Somare's passing. His death reminds us that we are still yet to reach our goal, Canaan. It has been 45 years since independence, and yet in many ways, Papua New Guinea is still not free. We are still not in Canaan, the land of the milk and honey. Our nation, Mr. Speaker, is one of the most resource-rich nations in the world. Yet it is only trading off our abundant blessings for temporary relief to stock the cupboards of a select few. The people despise the leaders, and the leaders ignore the plight of the people. We must put an end to this and start to work as one. Mr. Speaker, we should be allies in the struggle against poverty, disease, and greed. Instead, we have become strangers to each other. The freedom that we have been so richly blessed with has become meaningless because we abuse it in pursuit of hands that are not worthy of free men and women, Mr. Speaker. What use is this freedom if we use it only to further our slavery? If greed dominates our minds, lust governs our hearts, and pride leads the way, we shall never be truly free. Mr. Speaker, freedom is meaningless if we do not use that freedom to do what is right. What is freedom if our people are not enjoying it? Mr. Speaker, the present status of the country is a testament of a people who have abused the gift of freedom. We have used freedom to achieve our own ends rather than the hand our founding fathers have desired and God has chosen for us. In the words of Christ himself, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than this." We may not do what the Grand Chief has done, to lead an entire diverse nation to independence, but none of us was born by accident. God has fashioned us for a purpose and a reason. We must honor the fact that this is a Christian country. As the son of Somare takes this mantle and calls for the nation to journey towards economic independence, this is a task that he alone cannot achieve. Mr. Speaker, it must be a collective effort. Each Papua New Guinean, united together, working to the best of our abilities, will ensure this dream is achieved. A nation is not fashioned in the parliament, but is formed in the homes, in the schoolhouses, and in the churches across our nation. A nation is not made great by wealth, Mr. Speaker, or by scientists and geniuses. Greatness is found in the goodness of the people and their willingness, Mr. Speaker, to do what is right. In the words of one of the wisest men who have lived, righteousness exalted a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Mr. Speaker, the late Grand Chief dedicated this nation to God when he established August 26 as Remembrance Day, so the nation may never forget that it owes its existence to God. Our Grand Chief, the Honorable Sir Michael Thomas Somare, understood that though we may credit him to be the father of the nation, Mr. Speaker, he pointed us through to the true father of Papua New Guinea, and that is our God. The patriarchs of old, Mr. Speaker, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob sought the blessings of God above the praises of men, so their children will be blessed. It is in our father Somare's covenant that will ensure the children are blessed and will continue to be blessed in this nation. Mr. Speaker, it is up to us, the children, to maintain this covenant that has been established, for I believe that this is the only way we shall triumph. In Christ is found the future of Papua New Guinea. Mr. Speaker, Grand Chief Somare and the drafters of our Constitution were not mistaken when they enshrined in our Mama Law that we are and will always be a Christian country. It is not our politicking, Mr. Speaker, or our commerce and philosophizing that we shall find greatness. It is in our Christian faith. Our late Grand Chief ensured that we shall never, Mr. Speaker, forget this. Mr. Speaker, through your chair, I appeal to my fellow leaders and leaders in the business and the civil service. We must take this opportunity to rule with God in righteousness and compassion rather than with pride and greed. To be great, Mr. Speaker, is to be good. What eventually endures is not wealth, fame, or genius, but the good that we do to others. Let us not strive to live in the history books, Mr. Speaker, but like as others before me have said, Mr. Speaker, but instead to let us live in the hearts of men. Mr. Speaker, the only king who called God a man after his own heart was King David. That was the only king that God called a man after his own heart. And King David, Mr. Speaker, you and I know, killed a man and took his wife. Then God chose the son of that woman to become the king of Israel. One of the greatest mysteries, Mr. Speaker, I believe you and I have always wondered is why God still named King David a man after his own heart, or why God chose Solomon to be king. Maybe it had something to do with King David's heart, Mr. Speaker. His actions were human and sinful, but his heart always sought out forgiveness and gave forgiveness. Mr. Speaker, we were first forgiven by God. If we do not have a heart to forgive others, why should God forgive our sins? Forgiveness is God's character. Mr. Speaker, may I say, Grand Chief Somare saw us that he had such a heart. He always forgave. To be great, one must forgive, Mr. Speaker. I believe that this was Sir Michael Thomas Somare's true legacy. Above all things, Sir Michael was a good and faithful man. He was quick to forgive and was full of love and genuine compassion whenever he called us all so tenderly, Pikinini. For that we remember and adore him as our greatest leader. Mr. Speaker, we have all witnessed the exceptional outpouring of admiration and respect across the nation. Somare's legacy will live on in every village and home across this land and in the hearts of every citizen of this country. Somare was great because, Mr. Speaker, he was good. Let us forgive each other and unite as one people over the death of our founding Prime Minister. Cast aside our differences, Mr. Speaker, the differences of our past, and work towards a brighter future. Mr. Speaker, our Papa Somare has been called to rest. Like him and others before, all of us will one day go before the judgment throne of God. We all will answer for our actions before the great God of the universe. My heart broke for the little and common people who have gathered to pay their respects, Mr. Speaker. They have cried out their hearts with sincere tears of sorrow for their leader. They honored Somare in their own simple ways, but their actions were the most moving for me. I was touched by their grief, and I'm reminded that as leaders, we are only stewards and are elected to be servants of our people. We must serve them with honesty and integrity. Mr. Speaker, we must all remember that wealth gathered dishonestly will never save us from death, and money will not give us a second life. We are fragile humans who are here today and gone tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, let us stop destroying and condemning each other and rise as a nation that loves and is mindful of our fellow men and women, and take responsibility and give our best whilst we have this short life. Mr. Speaker, the remarkable document, our Constitution, was written by remarkable men. When we take it in its entirety, it simply tells us to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. To be really free, Mr. Speaker, we have to respect each other. Our rights, personal space and differences, this extends from our clans and families to the unique ethnic groups in our nation and the future generation. I pray that we leaders as citizens alike remember this as we mourn and lay the first and finest servant of our nation to rest. Mr. Speaker, a great world leader has fallen, but his legacy and the story of our country will continue. Yes, walk must go yet, but walk must go S-T-R-E-T. Walk must go straight. We not only mourn this great man, But as his children, we acknowledge that we still have a great task ahead. Our Grand Chief's work is not ours to complete. It's now ours to complete. Take courage, for the great God who gave us freedom will always be with us. May we settle for nothing less than true independence. We rally forth as one nation to complete the task our grandest of chiefs, Papa Somare, has begun. And Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, on behalf of my good wife Doris and my children and grandchildren, my people of Kompia Mambum, joining hands with our Enga Great Chief, Sepida Iparas, the people of Enga, we thank you, God, from the bottom of our hearts for the gift of Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare to Papua New Guinea. Our sincerest condolences to all of us as Papua New Guineans, the people of the Sipiks, Lady Veronica, and the children. Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare, rest in peace until the resurrection morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Patrick Puach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Excellency, the Governor General of Papua New Guinea, the Honorable Chief Justice, members of the Judiciary, the Prime Minister, Ministers of State, Governors of Provinces, the Leader of the Opposition, Members of Parliament, I rise to also pay tribute to a man, a great man, my hero, my mentor, my country. But before I do, Mr. Speaker, I received a diplomatic note from a minister in the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party that is addressed to me as leader of the National Alliance Party, because we have a relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, so it will be a remiss of me not to read this out on the floor of Parliament. This note is sent through a diplomatic note number 35/2021, dated the 4th of March from Beijing. And it's headed, Message of Condolence. Your Honorable Puach, shocked and grieved to learn of the passing away of Right Honorable Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare, former leader of the National Alliance and former Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea. I wish to extend my deep condolences to the National Alliance and his bereaved family. We acknowledge that Sir Michael highly valued his friendship with the Communist Party of China, and he will be remembered by us for his important contributions to the development of the relations between our two parties and our two nations. The passing of Sir Michael will not only inflict a tremendous loss to Papua New Guinea and the NA, but also brings deep sorrow to us for losing such a great friend. The CPC cherishes its friendship with the NA and stands ready to enhance exchanges and cooperation between our two parties and further promote our bilateral relationship. Signed, Song Tao, Minister, International Department of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. Mr. Speaker, while reading this out, I also would like to, on behalf of the family, to recognize what the Australian government did insofar as flying their flags half-mast sometimes back in honor of Sir Michael, a gesture that they only did for Nelson Mandela, the President of South Africa, when he died. Thank you, Australia, for that recognition. Mr. Speaker, there are many senior leaders of this country who have expressed their condolences, given their accolades to a man that we all call the father of our nation. Most of us senior leaders, I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, one way or another, have been trained and mentored by this great man. Prime Minister yourself was a minister in his government. One of our founding fathers, Sir Julius Jan, was his first Deputy Prime Minister, first Treasurer and Finance Minister. The Honourable Governor for Western Highlands was his Deputy Prime Minister. The Honourable Peter O'Neill was his Minister. The Honourable Sir Pukatemu was his Deputy Prime Minister. Many of us sitting on the floor today were his ministers, so we have every right to claim that Sir Michael is a mentor of the leaders. Many of the senior leaders have expressed what Sir Michael did when he first started his career as politician and went on and saw the challenges. And many would say that he's a man in a hurry, but I think he was confronted with the issue and he had that ability to organize people. And I think one of the greatest attributes of Sir Michael is to identify the strength of people and assembling them together to respond to the crisis or the opportunity that a country has. Mr. Speaker, we can sit the whole day and express our grievances and sorrow, but I think as leaders of this country, the challenge is in our hands. The sick block cancer and all the times have killed him. Citizens from this country, particularly our women folks. Mr. Speaker, today at the passing of Sir Michael, and as leaders of this country, I call upon all leaders to seriously look at investing in health facilities we have in this country. We have been talking and we have been talking. We need to seriously invest in health. Now addressing this like all issues as come up now, kisim all citizens Blayumi. I think that as a result of Sir Michael's departure, maybe our leaders must talk clear, talk out clear. Every budget health department must receive sufficient funding so we can invest in research, educating all citizens of the country, Blayumi. Now we handle this. Thank you, Prime Minister. You went your way to speak to your Australian counterpart. Look, long, give him, last help him, long Sir Michael. Unfortunately, this disease has overgrown and has limited the timing for us to rescue him. So instead of me depend on neighboring countries, the opportunity for us in the passing of our founding father, our government must seriously look at investment in health. I am sure Sir Michael will be happy to hear us talk about how we address our health issues. Let's set the target we've already identified. One of kind sick me plagat lo country blue yumi. We need to now resource the institutions to develop, and of course making sure that there is adequate medication available for our leaders, particularly our senior leaders in this country. Sir Michael is a great man, a great Prime Minister. I served under him for 9 years since I got elected in 2002. And I know that had we continued, by the way, under Sir Michael's leadership, this country witnessed an investment of $17 billion that has never witnessed in this country. And I think that if we allow the policies of the then government, this country will be filthy, filthy rich. The rest is now history. I think we need to get together and make sure that we promote the ideals of our forefathers and look forward to making sure that we discharge our responsibility honorably with responsibility. Before I conclude, let me take this opportunity on behalf of the family, Lady Veronica, children Beta, Sana, Arthur, Michael Somare Jr., and Dalsina, Emma, to say thank you to Prime Minister, the Honorable James Marape, for being so responsive and being responsible in determining and making sure that some decisions were taken. As leader of the National Alliance Party, I am honored, Prime Minister, that you were able to take certain decisions the first day that he died. The major one being honoring his wish when he was alive. He said to me many times that, Kandra, wherever you are, you make sure that you bring me back home. And Prime Minister, thank you so much. Long honor him this wish belong him. And I think he was thinking ahead of his time. He wanted his remains to also be seen as a uniting factor, but also an invitation to the rest of the country to visit his burial site. And I think it is fitting that he decided to come home. And thank you, Prime Minister, on behalf of the family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All honorable members, me asking you again, long we usat, you like make him talk, suppose me lari me over talk also and by me all night. So in order long you me honor him, great leader blow you mean all this fla, but you make him all talk blow you mean sort him, na usat all talk blow you write him finish lo paper. By you mean cooperate him, you go inside long, handset. So one time this plan, me ask him, Honorable Dr. Alan Marat. I'll make him talk below.
Prime Minister, Chief Justice, and members of the judiciary who are here with us this morning. I have a prepared speech. I didn't know I was going to speak, but thank you for asking me. In honor of a great man, the holy eyes of the sovereign triune God saw the unformed body of Michael Thomas Somare before God began to form him in his image, in his likeness, in the womb of his mother. God willed and purposed his life for greatness, never before displayed by anyone living in this land now called Papua New Guinea, the nation of nations. Before he was physically born, he had already been divinely set apart for greatness. Divine appointment as a leader who would receive godly wisdom and impart to people around him also took place before he was born. All the days of late Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare's life were divinely ordained and written in God's book of life before the first of them came to be, just before or on his birthday at Rapidik in Mairabal district in 1936. Mairabal district at Rapidik, East New Britain province, had been the birthplace of greatness in political leadership for this country, Papua New Guinea. He spent some 6 years of his childhood since his birth in Rabaul district before he moved on with his parents to other parts of Papua New Guinea. After World War II, his contemporaries in the public service then and in politics knew him well, as they witnessed his growing passion, patriotism, and tenacity for having a country diverse in culture, yet united in values and principles. Leaders are not born, they are developed. Some people thought that the late Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare lived by the standards of this world. Though he knew he lived in this world, he knew he would not have to engage in political arguments using the standards of this world. He knew that to succeed in politics, he would have to use political weapons that have divine power, in line with his calling to demolish political strongholds that culminated in the lowering of the Australian flag in Papua New Guinea in 1975 and proudly hoisting our own Papua New Guinea flag. Late Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare demolished political arguments of the colonial administration and every political pretension that set themselves up against the knowledge and wisdom for Papua New Guinea God had blessed him with. And he took captive every political thought throughout his political life to make it obedient to the godly values and godly principles in Christ Jesus. He had his mind as a strong Catholic Christian. He had in his mind. In the politics of education, in the politics of health, in the politics of economics, and in the politics of other issues, whether social or legal, and whether domestic or international, our father of the nation, Papua New Guinea, had an imposing stature. He knew what he wanted for Papua New Guinea and its people. And in the political processes, he had the transient zeal of a crusader, deserving each accolade accorded him in his lifetime. Following the 2002 national general elections, late Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare became the Prime Minister again. By God's grace, I became his deputy for a few months. A couple of times he left Papua New Guinea for overseas official engagements, entrusting the best interest of Papua New Guinea in my hands. Before he would leave our shores, he would converse with me. From our conversations, he very clearly displayed a tremendous interest in bringing up and nurturing naturally talented leaders. He showed patience always, looking at God's oneness in his triune nature, and consequential goodness for leading and managing a multicultural Papua New Guinea. We had some good laughs together in his prime ministerial office, and I enjoyed his political father figure displayed towards me. He was very inquisitive about issues of national importance and was always content and patient in our lack and insufficiencies socially, politically, and economically. My short stint as his deputy prime minister was not enough for him. He appointed me as Minister for Justice and Attorney General and principal legal advisor of his cabinet following the 2007 national general elections. No dirty politics this time, just faith and trust in and nurturing of quality human resources for national governance and keeping with his values and principles. Personally, I will always remember him for that. On behalf of the people of Matupit Island, and more particularly those who traditionally own the Rapidic land, and on behalf of all the people living in Rabaul District and East New Britain Province, and on behalf of my immediate and extended families, and on behalf of the Melanesian Liberal Party and its leadership, we express deep and sincere appreciation and thanks to the parents, though long gone years ago, that God used to give us a specially appointed modern-day powerful prophet in Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Topalangat Somare, and to give us greatness in leadership for Papua New Guinea. On all of our behalf also, I express deepest sympathy and sincere condolences to Lady Veronica, children Ada, Bertha, Sana, Dalciana, Junior, and the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Topalangat Somare, from God you came, and you have gone back to him. To us all, it is not how you started the race at Rapidic, but it is how you finished it. In your few quiet moments, when you heard the still small voice of God calling you, and you responded, "My God, my Maker. Into your hands I commend my spirit. Rest in eternal peace, Grand Chief. God bless Papua New Guinea.
Honorable William Duma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge the presence in our midst of our Governor General, the Grand Chief Sir Bob Dadai, the presence of our Chief Justice, Sir Gibbs Salika, Prime Minister James Marabe, our three former Prime Ministers, Sir Julius Chen, Honorable Pius Wing and Honorable Peter O'Neill, plus my fellow leaders. Mr. Speaker, I normally speak off the cuff, but this is such an occasion where I felt that I had to put on my views in paper, which I now, with your leave, read. Mr. Speaker, it is with great sadness that I, on behalf of the people of Mount Hagen and the party that I represent, join many others, including those who have gone before me, to express my deepest condolences and sympathies to Lady Veronica, Betha Somare, Sana Somare, Arthur Somare, Michael Jr., Dalciana Somare, and all the members of the extended Somare family of Murik Lakes, the Karao village Murik Lakes, and the relatives of our Grand Chief, the country's first Prime Minister, and all the people of East and West Sepik at the time of his untimely passing. Mr. Speaker, when I was attending primary school back in 1975, I was told that our country, Papua New Guinea, was getting its independence from Australia, and that a man from the coast called Michael Somare was our Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I had read and heard a lot about Sir Michael Somare, but never had the opportunity to meet him in person until 2000, when I was the Deputy Chairman of PNG Harbours Board, as it was then known. Sir Michael was at that time Governor of East Sepik and was the leader of opposition. And he met us at the boardroom of the PNG Harbours Board to discuss the possible leasing of land owned at that time by the Harbours Board to a company called South Seas Tuna Company, a company in which the East Sepik provincial government was a shareholder, for it to establish a tuna cannery on land owned by PNG Harbours Board. Unfortunately, the PNG Harbours Board, which at that time was led by the late Timothy Bonga, and I was the Deputy Chairman, did not cooperate easily with South Seas Tuna Company. And I could see that the Grand Chief was very, very disappointed, not happy with myself and the late Timothy Bonga. 2 years later, Mr. Speaker, in 2002, when I first entered the National Parliament, this House, as member for Hagen, the late Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare had become the Prime Minister. I was very worried and horrified. Now that he was our Prime Minister, I was under the impression that he would make life difficult for me in Parliament. And although, Mr. Speaker, I was not a member of the initial Kokopo camp in 2002, and to my great surprise, the Grand Chief Somare apparently forgave me and appointed me as his Minister for Environment and Conservation. Mr. Speaker, during my time as Minister for Environment and Conservation, Prime Minister Somare allowed us to consolidate 8 different pieces of confusing and convoluted legislation on environment matters in this country and introduce one single law which became the Environment Act. As a result of this new Environment Act, the inaugural Environment Council of Papua New Guinea was established, and one of the first major resource projects to be approved and processed under this new Environment Act was the new and the very first nickel mine in the country, which of course is the Ramu nickel mine. Mr. Speaker, it was through Prime Minister Somare's leadership and support to the then Mining Minister, the Honorable Sam Akotai, that the Ramu nickel mine was opened after many years of planning and unnecessary delays, and its environment permit for the first time was issued by myself under this new Environment Act. Mr. Speaker, the Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare also, for the first time, chaired the Coalition of Rainforest Nations, a very powerful group of developing countries which contributed a lot in matters to do with our environment around the world and changed the way in which wealthier and developed countries have now been able to deal with those developing countries who have
abundant forest resources. Mr. Speaker, as the Minister for Petroleum and Energy in Sir Michael's coalition government from 2011 to 2006 to 2011, I worked closely under his leadership, together with other leaders like Patrick Pruitt, other Somare, Prime Minister Marabe, and many others, to ensure that the transformational $19 billion PNG LNG project became a reality, resulting in our country joining for the first time the exclusive worldwide family of LNG producing nations. I recall, Mr. Speaker, on many occasions during the negotiation with ExxonMobil for this resource project, when I responded to his call, where he said, Duma, I need your help on this and that. And thank God all of us are able to respond to his call. During the last 9 hard and long years that I served as minister in the Somare government, Mr. Speaker, I did not at any stage witness Sir Michael Somare pushing and approving cabinet submissions and proposals which would benefit himself personally or his family. On a number of occasions, in matters of appointments to heads of departments, where he had to choose between a nominee originally from his own province of East Sepik and another province, he opted to support the nominee from another part of the country. Mr. Speaker, it would be fair for me to say that his successors, such as Donald Peter O'Neill, and our current Prime Minister, Prince Marabe, have taken his cue and followed his examples in many ways. He was a pathfinder, Mr. Speaker, in that regard. Mr. Speaker, our Grand Chief, Sir Michael Somare, was the main architect of our country as we know this today, something that would not have been possible without his drive and determination, as has been mentioned by many others before me. Sir Michael Somare was the chairman of the Constitutional Planning Committee as our country's first chief minister in 1974, which provided the foundation of our very homegrown constitution. Our homegrown constitution, Mr. Speaker, is still regarded as one of the best in the world. It was to men like him that we have been able to have a very, very strong constitution, one of the best in the world. Mr. Speaker, the Grand Chief's vision for our country's self-governance and independence inspired many others to help him make this dream of his a reality. I remember, Mr. Speaker, our Grand Chief as my Prime Minister, boss, and mentor. Although we were members of different political parties, he was a father figure to all of us who entered the political arena in the last 2 decades. Mr. Speaker, the Grand Chief was a chief's son, and he was in fact a chief himself. But he could adjust himself and deal with the grassroots, everyone at many different areas, levels of society, and still be respected. He was a simple man of the people. He was able to mix with his ministers at many times when the occasions required. On one occasion, Mr. Speaker, I remember correctly, I remember vividly, and that was when I was in Hagen, attending to one of our many constitutionally issued matters. And I remember getting a call from an unidentified number. And when I answered the call, Mr. Speaker, I heard someone ask me, is that you, Duma? And I said, yes, and who wants to know? And he said, it's me, Michael. And I asked, Michael who? I didn't in fact recognize his voice because the place was quite windy where I was. And he said, Michael Somare. I nearly fainted, Mr. Speaker. I was lost for words. He was one hell of a man who could adjust himself to any level wherever he found himself to be. He was a simple man, yet a powerful man. Mr. Speaker, Sir Michael, among many things, was a living encyclopedia of the history of our country, both pre-independence and post-independence. And he unfortunately has left us and taken all this with him. He was a giant among men. He was one of those unique, special, national leader of leaders who come around once in a lifetime. I was lucky, among many others, to have served as his minister. Sir Michael Somare spent many years, more years than anyone else, firstly as our chief minister, and then as our founding prime minister of the country. So, Mr. Speaker, his passing now really is an end of an era for our country. Mr. Speaker, we collectively have a responsibility to fulfill the legacy of this man and to ensure the continued development of our beautiful country, wherever we can, through politics, government, business activities, and of course, our daily lives as one people, one country, a dream that he brought to the fore. We will all now mourn Sir Michael's passing and acknowledge his contribution to the development of this country. He really was our first Grand Chief. Mr. Speaker, in passing, on behalf of my people of Mount Again, the United Research Party and its parliamentary members and supporters, I thank the people of Karao Village, Muruk Lakes, and the people of East and West provinces for continuing to elect this great man to our parliament over those many, many years. And finally, Mr. Speaker, as we all know, God gives and God takes. I thank God for giving this special man to our country. May his soul rest in eternal peace. Farewell, sir.
Before me ask him next, Honorable Member Long, talk me like remind him again you me. Lot time me work lo win him you me. So me ask him you blood honorable members, lot time you make him talk lo you make him short, at least 2 minutes. So you can make him talk inside lo this house lo look sabe lo this la. Great leader lo you me. Na you said you write him talk lo you istab lo paper, but you mean incorporate him. Thank you. May I ask him, Honorable Sam Basil.
The Speaker of this Honorable House, kindly through you let me acknowledge the presence of our Honorable Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, and colleague members of Parliament. Let me also warmly acknowledge the presence of His Excellency, Sir Bob Dadai, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's representative, head of our state, and also Chief Justice Sir Gib Salika, and our justices of Supreme Court and National Court who are present here in the chambers. Mr. Speaker, as member for Bulolo, parliamentary leader for United Labour Party, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Commerce and Industry, I am humbled to rise today and speak on this occasion, especially amid the dignified presence of this august and solemn assembly. It is not often that one stands in the shadow of earthly greatness. We are gathered here to honor the greatest leader of our 45-year-old sovereign state has ever produced. The amazing thing is that this greater leader we honor today is the spearhead in securing the independence of the sovereign state of Papua New Guinea. He is the principal leader and the driving force, our champion, even our hero in the building the many institutions that we now enjoy and often take for granted. It was then Honorable Michael Thomas Somare that led the team and the process from the House of Assembly in the 1960s to self-government in 1973 and then to independence on the 16th September 1975. The historical record of the achievements of Grand Chief Right Honorable Sir Michael Thomas Somare is attached and has become an importantly litany over the last 2 weeks since he left us bereaved on Friday, the 26th of February 2021. When I was informed about the sad news of our founding father's passing, I was among the East New Britain people of the Matupit. Noting his birthplace and his own adoption into the Matupit Funatarais, there were many solemn whispers using his Tolai name. Topalangat has gone to join our forefathers. But Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate, Sir Michael was not just a national leader, but a global leader, a leader of leaders. he can stand tall with the likes of the Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, Mahatma Gandhi of India, and also Nelson Mandela. But to us Papua New Guineans, this Sana from Murik Lakes, Angoram, our founding father, is incomparable. He is the only one, he stands apart. He is special, he is dear to all our hearts, and rightly so. Let me place on record my many thanks, and that I am sure of many Papua New Guineans, to my brothers and sisters from East Sepik. Thank you for sharing your son, your father, your leader with us all Papua New Guineans. Many forget that Papua New Guinea, with its 800+ languages, home to 1/6 of the total of 6,700 languages globally, is possible one of the most linguistically diverse countries in the world. Each of the language groups are comprised of our many varied tribes and clans. Each is a nation of its own. St. Michael and our founding fathers did not just have to contend with the colonialists, they had to deal with the many domestic, diverse and multi-ethnic, multilinguistic differences and the natural suspicions that come with new initiatives. They had to contend with the wide-ranging illiteracy as well, with the uneducated as the majority, and they had to contend with the advanced self-determination sentiments of Bougainvilleans and Papuans. But their collective efforts, led by the founding father, who lies before us, is why we sit in dignity, is why we sit in solemn respect in this supreme democratic institution, the National Parliament, as members of the National Executive Government, members of the Legislature, and judges from the judiciary arm of government. Mr. Speaker, the handset records of this Honourable House will show the many embarrassing clashes, debates and near physical fights, as well as the progressive decisions on policies and legislation made by and in this National Parliament. I recall some instances when I was directly involved, two that come to mind with sadness and great regret, where with the great Grand Chief, Sir Michael Thomas Somare, who lies before us here today. Once during the intensity and heat of the moment, I used some insulting words to then member for Angoram, Honorable Arthur Somare. That naturally drew the ire of Grand Chief, obviously as a father, who traded back with threatening words. Both exchanges, while covered by parliamentary privilege, were regrettably unparliamentary. Another case arose when I was part of this House in 2011 that referred to Grand Chief as a stranger in the House, based on a Parliament vote after his return from Singapore. I recall he had been bedbound for nearly 5 months. That vote by Parliament on his ousting and his Prime Ministership were later ruled out by the courts. I want to assure this Honourable House, Mr. Speaker, and the general public that Grand Chief and I later reconciled and made our peace together with the member for Vanimo Green, Honourable Belden Nama, who was then my PNG party parliamentary leader when those events occurred. The fruit of that reconciliation is shown in two ways that I see, Mr. Speaker, by the Grand Chief, Sir Michael Thomas Somare, handing of the Pangu Party flag when I sought his blessing to resurrect the National Iconic Party in 2017. And in the campaigning side by side with Grand Chief in East Sepik for his daughter and my then Pangu Party candidate, Ms. Dalsiana Somare Bras, in 2017. Ms. Somare continues to be one of my valued advisors as I served in the Ministry of Communication, Information Technology, Energy, Ministry of Treasury, Ministry of National Planning, and now as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Commerce and Industry. Mr. Speaker, I want to restate that Grand Chief Sir Michael's association with Bulolo and even down to my own Buang local level government descends down historical memory lane to Moniao village, where Pangu Party was born as the first political party of our country. It extends to strong ties with friendships with many Moravian leaders, including Boya Mosari, Jerry Nalau, Titi Christian, and the former three-term Bulolo MP, Honorable Matthew Bendum, to name a few. It embraces Sir Michael's three-term as Prime Minister with support from Bulolo and Morobe MPs together with many Momase, Islands, Highlands, and Papuan MPs. One of the things I noticed is that Sir Michael, not only as a national leader and a global leader, he had a personal touch with an extra large heart that forgives and let bygones be bygones. He has rightly and truly earned and deserving the title Father of Papua New Guinea. This should therefore be immortalized in our historical records. With these few words, on behalf of the United Labour MPs representing the districts, the union affiliates and the members nationwide, the Department of Commerce and Industry and the commercial statutory authorities, my own people of Bulolo, my family and staff, I extend our heartfelt condolences to Lady Veronica Somare, Berta, Ata, Sana, Michael Jr., Dalciana, and all the extended family members. I salute Grand Chief, Right Honorable Sir Michael Thomas Somare, and of course, I would like to acknowledge and say thank you to my governor for Morobe and the people of Morobe, through him, to have declared Najap Airport as Sir Michael Thomas Somare's airport. Thank you, farewell, and rest in God's eternal peace.
Honorable William Powie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Joe Pomat, Governor General, Excellency Sir Bob Dadai. I also recognize the Chief Justice, Your Honor, Sir Gibbs Salika, Prime Minister Honorable James Marape, Opposition Leader, Governors, Ministers, Members of Parliament, and more importantly, some of the remnants of our Grand Chief, Friendship of Sir Michael Thomas Somare, who are here in the likes of Sir Julius Chen, Honorable Pius Wingti, and other former Prime Ministers who are here in this chamber. At this time, I wish to represent the people of Southern Highlands, 5 electorates, the electorates of Nipa Kurubu, who is Member for Parliament, the Honorable Jeffrey Komal is here, the electorate of Mendy Monhiu, he is locked in lockdown and is not here, but I've conveyed his condolence to the message, to the family during our funeral ceremony. The Minister for Intergovernment Relations and the member for Imbongo, who is also sick. I represent the people of Imbongo, the Minister for Higher Education, Honorable Wesley Ramna, who is here, the member for Kagwerave, and of course the former Prime Minister, Honorable Peter O'Neill, who represents the people of Yalubu Pangia. On behalf of the people of Southern Highlands, first and foremost, and to the family of the Grand Chief, Sir Michael Thomas Somare, to the people of East Sepik, to the people of Papua New Guinea, I say sorry on behalf of our people. If my people in one way or the other have aggrieved the Grand Chief in the conduct of his leadership, I humble myself and say sorry to the people of Papua New Guinea and to the families of Grand Chief, say, Michael Thomas Somare. I see, say Michael Thomas Somare, the Grand Chief's performance, in my view, is unmatchable. My words cannot adequately describe. He stands incomparable in the world leadership is concerned. I don't think he is just the ordinary father of the nation. I think he has been specifically ordained by God for a purpose. You look around the world and see democracy and freedom are great values of life people, leaders world over have stood for, to the point of even dying for that worthy cause. But in Papua New Guinea, yes, we see him as the father of the nation. A title rare. But it's not just a father of the nation. I think we should go further. He's been called for a destiny. I qualified this because some of us who are members of parliament, we have the exposure of governance, service delivery, institutions of government. But you may have had his shortfalls, lack of exposure, but he crafted the nation. So you think this is just by chance? I think he was called by God for a purpose. I believe so. And I also believe that leadership is a special calling. He is a living testimony of their greater calling. Let me just qualify this by saying and bringing to light some of the statements that have been echoed by the leaders in here. Democracy, constitution, and freedom to live are great values. I think we need to value this in Papua New Guinea. Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare has clearly lived for this, and here we are getting. But let me just give you some indications of great men in the world, and in my view, the Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare should not be seen in the context of PNG, but he stands among the leaders of the world who stand for some of these great values in life. If you look at the United States of America, like President Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States of America, who as people regarded as one of America's greatest heroes, due to his role as savior of the Union and emancipator of enslaved people. He's one that stands out among leaders who believe in values of freedom, of life, and greater values of humanity. Now, let me cut it short, although I have a written statement. Let me bring you to India's experience of Mahatma Gandhi, who is seen as a hero of India today, where millions remember him because he was brave and fought for independence in India and never gave up when the British government was trying to rule India by violence. Gandhi used non-violent resistance to organize and protest the unfair treatment of the people of India. And of course, we are all familiar with people like Nelson Mandela. He said, if this is the worthy cause to die, I am prepared to die. So what does those kind of statements qualify? It's a great statement. People who are able to put their lives for democracy, for the Constitution, for freedom. And I quote, according to Nelson Mandela, I have cherished the ideal of democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live and achieve. Mr. Speaker, he says, if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. So in PNG, Mr. Speaker, democracy and freedom and the Constitution and the title Father of the Nation, in my view, is not just an ordinary title. I will not match the shoes of Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare. He is, to me, is an institution. He is the father of the Constitution that governs and operates and deals with the way we manage and govern, not only for now, but for the future to come. He may be gone today in the side of body and be buried, but the legacies of Somare will linger in the minds of all of us, our children, and the future years to come. On behalf of the people of Southern Highlands, I join the governors, leaders of Parliament who are here. I think need to give credit to Prime Minister and the Governor for NCD youth organized a national mourning, feeding for our people to mourn the father of the nation. And we commend you for that. For the challenges going forward, as some of my statements in the speech, I will cut it short, and I have other speakers who are in the picture and those who have spoken. And in the essence of time, I will hand my statement to the handset, but for now, I want to leave two challenges that is confronting this country today, and we leaders, in the presence of the casket of the Grand Chief, the father of this nation, we need to see beyond what Somare has lived for. The constitution of the people of Papua New Guinea is fundamental, and the rule of life. So was constitution, Banis Blanc constitution and Bagrab, the future of the country will be at stake. And it starts with us as honorable leaders in parliament. Second, big challenge when we look in Blongen, and of course the Grand Chief lived for unity in diversity. Unity in diversity. I see disintegration and fragmentation of services and government services and delivery and governance is going to pose a serious challenge to this country. We are already fragmented, but the Grand Chief fostered a national unity in the midst of diversity. Service delivery and governance going forward in the future must echo this. We cannot go and fragmentize and disintegrate governance and service delivery any further, where we leaders worry about our little districts and leave behind no room for national calling. We need to focus on unity as the pillar going forward. Thank you very much. I join all the leaders, the governors, and the people of Papua New Guinea in sending my condolences to the family. We are in together mourning. He is our father. He is not only the father of the biological children of Grand Chief, he is the father of all Papua New Guineans. And I pray, because he has lived and given his life for the worthy cause, I believe God will reward him a special place in heaven. Thank you.
Honorable Link Stuckey.
Mr. Speaker, I join with my colleagues to acknowledge our distinguished guests and leaders in this chamber today, to remember the extraordinary contribution that this exceptional leader, our Grand Chief, made to our young nation. First, I want to remember a few special moments we have had with the father of our nation. And second, it is appropriate that I also reflect on his great economic legacy. Our special moments. Mr. Speaker, like many thousands of Papua New Guineans in the past fortnight, my people of TVWAN, my family and I, remember our own very special moments with Grand Chief. Those moments that capture his love for the people of TVWAN like no other Prime Minister. Also, on behalf of our hard-working, peace-loving, well-integrated civic community in TVWAN and New Ireland, I would like to convey their deepest sorrows at this time. And whilst they may not be with their families, brothers and sisters in Wewak next Tuesday for the final funeral program, their thoughts and prayers join with Lady Veronica and the Somare family. Sir Michael gave the people of TVWAN and the Matanai a son, Arthur and Sana in the Matanai. And the people of East Coast Karanalik in TVWAN and Patpatar in Namatanai gave them a precious daughter. So the living spirit of Sana does not only flow in our veins, but the TVWAN will forever multiply in the forests, rivers, and mountains of New Ireland. 26 years ago, in early 1994, Chief Somare, together with Sir Timothy Polhai, asked me if I was interested to join their beloved Pangu party and contest the caving open seat. Later that year, my inaugural nomination was nearly derailed. With no confirmation from the then leader of the party to witness the event, my small team in TVWAN issued a mayday, a cry for help, to the then governor for East Sepik province to travel to New Ireland within 48 short hours and endorse our nomination. Young man, I don't know how I'll get there, but I will be there and support the Pangu party in New Ireland. And with that gesture, with no warning, sacrificing his responsibilities to the people of his own province and committing to another, Michael Somare demonstrated his love and commitment to all Papua New Guineans, even those of us who lived in the furthest corners and the smallest islands in Papua New Guinea. And it was on a small island, 25 minutes boat ride from TVWAN town, that Sir Michael and Lady Veronica enjoyed his last but one of his favorite pastimes, fishing in the turquoise waters and blue currents of the Tikak Islands. Somare's great economic legacy. Mr. Speaker, one of the tasks of a father is to provide for his family, to put bread on the table. Let me go through some numbers quickly to demonstrate how good a provider was our Grand Chief during his time as leader of both the Pangu Party and the National Alliance. Mr. Speaker, during the Grand Chief's years as Prime Minister, the PNG economy did very well. Economists like to measure the increase in the size of the economic pie after allowing for inflation. This is called the real growth rate. During the 18 years that the Grand Chief was the Prime Minister, the average real economic growth rate was 4.8%. In stark or sharp contrast, in the 26 years when the Grand Chief was not Prime Minister, the average real economic growth rate in PNG has only been 1.4%. So we can ask ourselves the question today, how much better off would we in PNG today if the real economic growth rate under the Grand Chief of 4.8% had continued in all the years he wasn't the father? The answer is we would be more than twice as well off, more than double. More precisely, we would on average be 2.4 times better off. How much better our economy would be, how much better our household incomes, how many more jobs would we have if we had kept up with the performance of the true economic father of our nation. I could go on. I could talk about his record of keeping inflation at moderate levels, of the increases in employment, of continuing and building on the reform agenda of the Marape years. But this simple fact is enough. He provided well for us during his 18 years as father breadwinner. And if everyone else had done as good a job, the people of PNG would be twice as well off. Goodbye, Chief. The people of KVN will surely miss you. But we will rejoice knowing that a Somare will forever travel the Bolominsky Highway Lady Veronica, Beta, Sana, Arthur Maitamba, Michael Jr. and Dalciana, thank you for sharing your husband, your father, with the people of KVN, the people of Papua New Guinea, and the people of the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Richard Maru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Governor General of PNG, His Excellency Bob Dadai, our Chief Justice, Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of Cabinet, Governors, Members of Parliament. I rise today on behalf of my people of Yangon Social District in East Sepik to pay my respect to the Grand Chief, our father, our champion, Prime Minister of Prime Ministers, Leader of Leaders, Chief of Chiefs, for the great work he has done to mold and shape this nation into what it is today. I start by thanking God in heaven for choosing him before he was even born and raising him and molding him to be the leader of this great nation. On behalf of our people, I want to thank all our citizens, our leaders from across the country, our government, Prime Minister, you and your cabinet, for a gesture in giving our Grand Chief one of the most fitting tributes that will go down in the history of our great nation. Thank you very, very much for these 2 weeks of mourning and all that you are doing to give him a grand farewell. Thank you very much, not only of my district, but I'm sure for all our people in East Sepik and the Sepik region. With every leader comes a team, Mr. Speaker. This morning I want to say thank you to the Bully Beef Club, the core leaders who worked with him and supported him and believed in him. On behalf of his people, thank you very much for believing in his leadership and his dream to bring independence in a very short time since he got elected into Parliament. To their families who are still alive today, to those who are still alive today, like Sir Peter, and to those who have gone, thank you very much for believing in the Grand Chief, giving him the opportunity to lead our nation and to make him our finest leader ever. Without the team, he wouldn't have been who he was and who he is to us. So thank you very, very much to the team who stood by him. I want to say thank you to our founding public servants, both local and expatriates who stood with him to forge our nation to come into being as the independent state of Papua New Guinea on the 16th day of September 1975. I remember those years very well because I was just doing my grade 7 at Brandy High School in Wiebeek. And we practiced and we learned about the meaning of independence, and we all got excited. And we marched down to Prince Charles Oval to welcome Prince Charles to the Oval as our chief guest when our great chief ushered in independence for our great nation. Mr. Speaker, I remember I didn't serve with him as a minister in his government, but he appointed me to be Chief Executive Officer of the National Development Bank. And I remember two moments that I'll never forget. One, I was tasked to go and lead an insolvent institution, the bank which was about to go bankrupt. I discovered in my first week that it was owed 11 million and was about to be declared bankrupt. And I brought a submission to Cabinet in Alatau and informed the Grand Chief then he only had two choices: wind up the bank, sell the assets and liquidate the liabilities, or he has to recapitalize the bank. And I will never forget that NEC meeting. He said, MD, you will never close the bank. He didn't allow any member of Cabinet to speak that particular NEC. The bank will not close. We will find the money. The bank will be open. Thank you very much. You can leave. This was the heart of the man. He was not prepared to close down the People's Bank. He found the 5 million, recapitalized the bank, and NDB is what it is today because of his decision not to close the People's Bank. He has a heart for the people of this nation. So I salute you today for one of the best decisions you made to keep the People's Bank alive. It is now an icon, an institution serving the people of our country. Thank you very much, Grand Chief. The Agriculture Bank was your baby, and NEB is still your baby today. Another incident I remember very well. He called me up to his office as Prime Minister, and he said to me, oh, my party president wants a loan. Can you help him? He wants 2 million. I looked at him in the eye and told him this: Chief, I cannot help you. This man is not a good borrower. He still owes the bank 1.5 million. He may be your party president, but I ain't going to lend him any more money. It was a very short discussion. He said, thank you very much, son, and I left. He never spoke to me about that again. He respected institutions of government. That's what I learned about the great old man. Young leaders and ministers, prime ministers, we must learn from that. He respected people he put in authority and the institutions that he set up. As Grand Chief License State, I'm so happy. I thank my people of Young South and East Sepik for voting him election after election. It made us very, very proud to be called Sipiks. What do you mind? Papua New Guinea will be synonymous with Somare. Somare is Papua New Guinea. And no one will take that from us, the Sipiks, or from you. Thank you very much, Grand Chief. We will forever be grateful for what a great leader and father and son you are, and he will always be. As I close, Prime Minister, I bring to you one request. When I was planning minister in 2018, I put in the budget the first 25 million and released 25 million to build a world-class cancer center in Port Moresby. It's under construction right now, as you know, Prime Minister. couple of weeks back, I went to visit the CEO of the hospital to get an update on the cancer hospital. And this is what he told me. We only need 50 million more to complete the finest cancer unit and center in the whole region. Prime Minister, it is my humble plea to you to please find that 50 million to complete that world-class cancer hospital here, which will be as good as any other cancer center in the world. And please name it the Sir Michael Thomas Somare Cancer Center. That is my humble plea to you, Prime Minister, today, and to our government. Mdalo cancer, we need to help all our women and children and those suffering for cancer. It's a serious need in our country. And it will be a fitting tribute for us to go ahead and finish and complete this cancer center and to name him after our great father and our leader. With that, Grand Chief, you have run the race, you have fought the good fight. I have no doubt the Lord will reward you when he comes back, and I look forward with the rest of us to see you in paradise, in heaven made new. Rest in peace, and God bless.
Before she ask him, Honorable Speaker again, me like ask him all honorable members now. Okay, explain me all this tableau gallery. Suppose mobile will you and me on, please put him in flight mode. You're allowed look him photographs, but put your mobile on flight mode. I now call upon Honorable Gary Jufa.
Mr. Speaker, Governor General, Chief Justice, Prime Minister and Chief Mona. On behalf of the people of Oro, whom I am very fortunate to represent, and more specifically on behalf of one of the last living dear friends of Sir Michael Thomas Somare, Mackenzie Daugi, who was a member on his constitutional planning committee. I wish to convey our most sincere condolences and sympathy to Lady Veronica, the children of Sir Michael and Lady Veronica, Bertha, Sana, Arthur, Michael and Dulcie, and his beloved grandchildren, the people of East Civic, who gave us this great warrior. And I convey this on our loss, a great loss. Sir Michael Thomas Somare, a visionary, a man of great courage, and a warrior for democracy. Not just in Papua New Guinea, but in the Pacific. I want to take time to acknowledge the historic anecdotes presented here by his dear friends, former prime ministers, members of parliament, and I think that we need to tell these stories. They ought to be taught in all our schools so that our children can learn and understand where this great country came from and who was responsible. Only then can we know where we are truly going. Rest in eternal peace, You may have left us in physical form, but you will be in every breath we take, in every footstep, and in every heartbeat. Farewell, warrior, leader, founding father of Papua New Guinea, Sir Michael Thomas Somare.
The Honorable Robert Agarobe.
Mr. Speaker, Honorable Prime Minister, His Excellency Governor General, Chief Justice, the Opposition Leader, and members of Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Lauwegu Central Tauni Manima, oi aherodia maina time sisina, oi heni mai. Itaeda lohia tauna, bona founding father, late Grand Chief, Right Honorable Sir Michael Thomas Somare, GCL, GCMG, CH, CF, SSI, KSG, PC, IMI Hemautaurai, I Henia. Mr. Speaker, IMI Central Provincial Hanua Lohiadia, Heina Tano Lohiadia, Tatau, Hahine, Bona Memero Kekeni, Lada Diai, IMI Boga Hisi Bada Heriana, Ita the Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare, Ita ia Rakatania, Maena Raka Matamatana, ia Abia. Mr. Speaker, I Sinamai, Lady Veronica Somare, Mai Natuna, Bona Tubuna, Veridia, Beta, Ata, Sana, Junior Michael, Bona Dalciana, Sir Michael and Murik Lake, Bona East Sipik Tauni Manima, I am my Boga Hisi, Bada Heriana, Bona I am my Lalokau, Bada Heriana, Kudomai I Henmui, Emui Maori, Baine Lata, Bona Baine Namo, Dirawaladanai. Grand Chief Sir Michael Thomas Somare, Oi Rakaguna, Dirawa Ida, Badina, Oi Be Lohia Tauna, Oye Mukara Dainai, Gabu Oi Haya Gaya Gaya, Badina Aidano, Gabe Aidoai Mai. Dirawa Ladanai, Bamahuta Tamamai Lalokauna, Baheo Namo. Mr. Speaker, Lohia Tamui, Heina Ruma Badanai, Taniku Badaherea, Oha Kalam Dainai.
Honorable Peter Siamalili Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Your Excellency, Governor General Sebob Dayai, Chief Justice Gibbs Salika, Honorable Prime Minister James Marape, Ministers of Cabinet, former Prime Ministers, honorable members, my colleagues, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, Papua New Guinea and Bougainville. Also, I'm regional member Blong Bougainville, Milak Maki Maus Blong, President Blong Me too, Honorable Ismail Trama, ABG government Blong Me all people, Blong Autonomous Region of Bougainville, Milak Isim Displa time Long, give him Bikla Luksave too, Long on man usati bin sana one time, Grand Chief, Ol Bougainvillean said, Sir Paul Lapun, usat long 1972, and we've been passing leadership go long, Grand Chief. Sir Alexis Sari, usat mi bin kamaposem First Chief of Staff. Donatus Mola, Anthony Anugu, Joseph Lue, Rafael Bele, now in the presence of this chamber, Mumrai Blomi, Grand Chief John Momes, Usat, late Grand Chief Bloyumi Emibin Makime Mosem Chair, Blong Constitutional Planning Committee. Today is a sad day for Papua New Guinea and the Autonomous Region of Bougainville, as we mourn the passing of our founding father. On behalf of my immediate family, the people of Kunwa, Keriaka, Torokina, and the Bana people of Bougainville, I would like to pass my sincerest or my deepest condolences and heartfelt sorrow to Lady na Mama Veronica, my brother Sana, Arthur, Michael Jr., and my sisters Betha, Delcina, together with your children. For me and my mother and siblings, we have a very special space for Grand Chief, Sir Michael. When the Bougainville crisis erupted furiously in 1988 with reckless killing, he rescued my father, late Chamalili, and us from Kieta, and brought us to Popondetta, where my mother is from. My late father was the last North Solomons Province Secretary, now known as the Provincial Administrator, under the provincial government system. North Solomons was known as that before we got our autonomous status under the Bougainville Peace Agreement. Grand Chief was the first foreign minister under the Anamaliu government, and at that time, during the peak of the crisis, the rebels were threatening elite Bougainvilleans, and my late father was one of the elite Bougainvilleans the rebels had on their list. But the Grand Chief is a man who foresees future ahead of time and ahead of anyone. Just like he had foreseen a bright future to unite Papua New Guinea and to become one nation, when the odds were against him, he also foresaw the future of Bougainville right from the starting of the crisis. And when everyone was considering violence to solve the crisis and a bleak future between Bougainvilleans and Papua New Guineans, he foresaw a peaceful Bougainville once again, and how Bougainvilleans and Papua New Guineans will work together to restore government services and restore normalcy back on Bougainville. Fellow Papua New Guineans and Bougainvilleans, Grand Chief saw that my father will be needed to restore government services back on Bougainville, for Bougainvilleans to carry out their peaceful daily lives by continuing their colorful and unique Melanesian traditional culture in their tranquility environment, living in harmony with our Melanesian brothers of Solomon Islands, and maintaining the relationship between these two great Melanesian brothers. And so he removed my father and brought him to Popondetta, Although in Popondetta the Grand Chief was still concerned of my late father's safety, he still had plans for Bougainville's future after the crisis, and so he sent my father to the United Nations. Then he appointed him High Commissioner to Fiji. And further on, he appointed him to Europe, where he served the European Union in Belgium. Far away from the turmoil that was raging between Papua New Guinea and Bougainville, and at times threatening our Solomon Islands neighbors. While my father was far away in safety, Grand Chief was heavily involved with restoring peace on Bougainville as Bougainville Minister under the Se Mekere Morauta's late Mekere's government. By that time, as crisis was over, Grand Chief, as the Prime Minister, sent my father back to Bougainville to be the first Chief Administrator. In 2005, the formation of the autonomous Bougainville government was formed, and it was very heartwarming for Grand Chief during my late father's funeral service at the St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Port Moresby to retell this story as part of his tribute to my father in April 2007. I am now retelling this story as my part of my tribute to my Grand Chief in this state funeral here at the National Parliament. This story is not only for the Somare and the Chamanli families. This story for the new relationship and the future of Bougainvilleans and Papua New Guineans. My fellow Bougainvilleans and Papua New Guineans, Grand Chief already foresaw peace on Bougainville, long before the signing of the Bougainville Peace Agreement in 2001, and long before the restoration of government services through the formation of the ABG, and long before the referendum, which saw 98% of Bougainvilleans voted for independence. The people of West and East Sepik, mipla like talk thank you, long yupla, long giving mipla sana. The greatest ever Melanesian paramount chief of all time and a trailblazing Pacific leader, PNG's father of unity. Farewell, my Grand Chief. May your soul rest in eternal peace with our Creator until we meet again. God bless Papua New Guinea and Bougainville.
Honorable Alan Bed.
Your Honor, Prime Minister, brother leaders, it is my sad duty and honor to speak on behalf of my brother, Governor Wowo, and all the other members of East and West Sepik who cannot speak here today. I want to respond on behalf of the Sepik people to all the people of Papua New Guinea for this incredible outpouring of sorrow and love, the likes of which this land has never seen. I want to also acknowledge, on behalf of the Sepik people, the tributes that have come from around the world to this, the greatest sana we were privileged to witness walk among us. I hope I can do him justice in thanking all of you. The Sepik people acknowledge and are deeply humbled by all of your tributes. On behalf of the Sepik people, let me begin by thanking the traditional owners of this land, the Motu Koita people, whose language we heard here today for the first time in many, many years. And I thank Governor Agorobe for honoring us, because Sir Michael Thomas Somare, Grand Chief, the Right Honorable, spoke Motu very well. It was a fitting tribute. And we thank the Motu Koita people. The Sepik people also thank everyone who had a hand in his journey through leadership, the Tolai people, where he was born, the Morobe and the Medang people in his formative years, whose customs and values he learned and adopted, and to everyone else who added to the wisdom of this great man over the years. The civic people, thank you. We have just witnessed the passing of a great light out of this world. And while this brings us great sorrow, it should also bring us renewed enthusiasm to meet the challenges we face, because the children are supposed to do better than the parents. That is how humankind was intended. Somare and his team of founding fathers did a tremendous job. We still have a race to run. He led a great team of men and women, and they did an amazing job. They tried to be better. They were better. They were our best. Yes, we should have flown him around the country in 2017, or 2018, or 2019. We did not. Just like many things, the cancer facility, many things we talk about, that perhaps we should do better, like they did better. The civic people, with much gratitude, would also like to recognize all the founding fathers that worked with and elevated our Grand Chief Sana to the greatness that this country now bestows upon him. As we heard the tributes, it becomes difficult to add, because there is only one Sana. There will never be another like him again. While still living, he became legend, and he became myth together, like Simongun and Yawiga before him, except he grew greater than his forefathers. I am sure he drew inspiration from Yawiga and Simongun, because how else could he have become what we have seen? Everyone had a story to tell. And as I sat through the nights at the house cry, and let me place on record the deepest gratitude of the civic people to the Chief Mona and a son of Sana, Prime Minister Marape. Also to the NCD governor and another son of Sana. We are in your debt for hosting the house cry on our behalf. There are so many stories to tell, many of them we could not tell. We ran out of time. But that's a good thing. Let's keep the stories. Let's tell our stories. Let's keep his story. Let's keep all our forefathers' stories. Let's keep them alive. We are lucky because we lived in a time when a colossus walked amongst us. We are the privileged few. So let us celebrate his life by looking to the future. Let's not dwell on the past. Australia described him as an angry man. They also described him as their greatest friend. And they are right. He was this and much more. Somare did not hold it against them. Him and his indomitable founding fathers managed to turn a regrettable situation into an asset. And we look around to see it today. Today, Australia is our biggest supporter. We should learn this great lesson from Somare. Not only that, we should practice it. Those who were his enemies became his enduring friends. So on behalf of the civic people, I want to thank Australia and her people for molding this man and making him what he was, the greatest civic and the greatest Papua New Guinean so far. Few people loved this country like he did. Though small in stature, his heart was bigger than all our hearts. Even in his last breath, he was still speaking of unity, of this country, and for his love of our people. I want to thank Prime Minister Morrison and the Australian people on behalf of the Sepik people and the Papua New Guinean people for the great honor of flying your flag at half-mast in recognition of our founding father. We thank also the people of Japan because they too had a hand in molding this great chief, Somare. I hope we, his children, will continue to build on that relationship too.